emergency ward in Accra. And some people, relatives and friends of accident victims, forcefully entered the emergency triage area. It followed their frustrations over perceived delays in the treatment of the critically injured patient. Now, the incident escalated into verbal aggression and ended up with the physical assault of a nurse on duty. Now, this prompted the Ghana, the hospital management, to get security to restore order. And this influx disrupted the hospital service delivery temporarily and created a tense, unsafe environment for health workers. Now, who are the key actors in this particular issue? Ralph St. Williams, he is an activist. He led the group that stormed the hospital and live streamed the event, accusing the nurses of neglect and delay in providing emergency care. The hospital condemned the invasion and the assault, stating that it endangered lives and disrupted care. A nurse was physically assaulted and required support for recovery. The health ministry condemned the attack, launched an investigation, and promised to bolster security at the hospital. Now, the Ridge Hospital management provided 800 Ghana cedis and a new mobile phone to the assaulted nurse and has called for mutual respect between staff, patients, and visitors. Now, on this 800 Ghana cedis, there are people on social media asking, didn't the girl have health insurance?
Yeah.
If you're assaulted at work, don't you have any form of insurance? Must you be given cash? But the explanation also is that she lost money and her phone.
Yeah.
So that's why she was given the money. Now, the hospital has urged the public not to film in clinical areas without consent, citing privacy concerns. Now, these are some of the other reactions we've received. The Ministry of Health, as I said earlier, has condemned the attack. They've emphasized the protection and safety of health workers as paramount and pledged a formal investigation into the delay allegations and security lapses. Now, the Government and Hospital Pharmacists Association has also strongly condemned the violent assault, calling it lawless and a threat to healthcare delivery. The Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association has also demanded swift justice and reaffirmed support for the nurses. And we've had different political voices also speaking to this particular issue. We don't know if any arrests have been made. Have we made any arrests yet?
Maybe it's also because there are divided opinions as to who are the individuals really behind it. But Ralph St. Williams has come up on top. The accusation from the news, the nurses, is that he led the attack. He's also denied that, the media reports, and also having spoken to him yesterday at length as well, he is of the opinion that, well, there's a different account of what might have transpired, and that if we go back to the CCTV footage at the hospital, we'll get a better view of what happened. So divided opinions on what should happen, but the call is, if indeed the woman was assaulted, then we need prosecution.
What is obvious is that we need to talk about patients' rights.
Yes.
We need to talk about the pressures on Ghana's overburdened health system, public health system, and the safety and dignity of healthcare providers working under difficult conditions.
Right.
And we have Dr. Justice Yankson. He's a lawyer, former vice president of the Ghana Medical Association, with us. Doc, good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning, Kojo. I can hear you.
It's good to hear your voice. The last time you were here to talk about these same issues, healthcare delivery in the studio, and unfortunately, we are bringing you back to talk about the same thing.
Well, that's the nature of the world, and that's the nature of work.
You follow the Ridge Hospital issue, right? Your initial thoughts on this issue, how it's been handled, the various reactions, Doc?
Well, I think that we just need to distill the issues properly. There is a clear-cut criminal aspect, and there is a bit that you may term an institutional issue which ought to be looked into. The assaults on the health professionals should have seen some level of prosecution or attempt at prosecution by now. Any worker, be it a media person, a lawyer, an accountant, a medical doctor, a nurse, a pharmacist, deserves the right to work in a peaceful and a very safe environment. Under no circumstances should people who have chosen their lawful profession and are practicing them within the remit of the law be attacked by the very persons they seek to treat, manage, or help one way or the other. Everybody has a right to health work. Everybody has a right to health care. However, your right to seek health care does not mean that in the process you unleash all kinds of assaults on the health professional, be it verbal, be it physical, be it emotional abuse, whatever it is out of the equation. And anybody who does that, the laws of our land must be brought to bear on such persons, irrespective of your societal class. This should be made very clear to everybody, because the more we continue on this tangent, the worse we will get as a people.
So Ralph and his people should be behind bars or in courts as we speak?
As far as I'm concerned, yes. This is a clear-cut criminal matter. We all saw the nurse, what had happened to her. We heard her account. She was physically attacked. On that basis, whoever is involved should be in court by now. The beauty of the court process is that you also will have your right as an accused to tell the court or justify whatever you think you did or what you think is your right, for which reason you went on that tangent. And the court will decide for both sides. Ultimately, you may be found guilty or otherwise, depending on the defense you mount up. And once you go through the process, irrespective of the outcomes, we will all be certain that at least the rule of law is working. There's room for appeals and what have you. But if people are left all the hook, then such abuses will continue to persist. The impunity with which people do things will continue. Activism does not equate to assault on individuals, and such persons should be put in their right position.
And doing that, the Ministry of Health established a committee to investigate the incident. We know that the investigations will be dual, administrative and criminal. Is that not enough for now?
No, it's not enough for now, because it is, like I said earlier, it's a two-sided thing. The criminal aspect should be investigated and prosecuted by the state agencies mandated to do such activities. The institutional one, the Ministry of Health and the management of the hospital, as well as the Ghana Health Service, can also take charge of it. So we need the institutions of state who are responsible for the criminal component to brief all of us and to also show to us that the people have been put before court.
And Dr. Yankson, you go online now on X and nurses are trending number one. It's obviously because of also the concerns Ghanaians have about them. The fact that when it comes to service delivery in most of these public hospitals, the sentiment is that we're not getting the best in terms of human approach from these nurses. Yes, you may have, of course, based on your union background, some disposition towards the nurses and their concern and their side of the story. But the bigger picture about concerns that Ghanaians have with how nurses treat patients at public facilities, how do we deal with that?
Well, let's be candid. As far as this discussion is concerned, at least I have seen nothing less than 2 decades of practice. I've seen the good, the bad in the process. Yes, there are situations or there are times that you may say that a health worker's conduct, not necessarily nurses, was not the best. I won't hide or shy away from that. However, there are also a lot of good health professionals who discharge their duties with professionalism that everybody can get anywhere on earth. So the fact that there have been 1 or 2 incidents involving nurses does not mean that all nurses or health professionals are bad. Secondly, we should also begin to understand how the healthcare system itself works. You see, with all due respect, the healthcare system is not like the supermarket where, for example, it is on first come, first served basis. No. We have a system where you may be the first to enter the health facility, but we may have to end up treating somebody who came in maybe 2-3 hours before you, or even 30 minutes after you. Reason is that we have a situation where we have what we can describe as old cases and emergencies. And even within the emergency setup, we always have what we call the triaging system. So once we triage, somebody who came after you may need the healthcare attention more than you. Somebody may come in and probably do some initial stabilization of you, but you may realize that the concentration may be on others. It is not because of favoritism, it is not because somebody knows somebody, but it is just the nature of the work. And sometimes, unfortunately, the patients themselves are not patient, the relatives are also not patient, and when they see that maybe attention is being given to others, they believe that, well, there is something fishy, and they begin to insult, they begin to say all kinds of things towards the health professional.
Doc,
I've seen situations, yes.
Do we have people at the hospitals who manage these situations? For example, when I'm brought to the hospital in an emergency case and I go through triaging, right? Do we have maybe a health information person or a customer service person who goes around to really talk to these patients and their family to explain the process and to tell them that, look, we've done triaging, you are say green and there are people in red, and those people need to be taken care of. Your situation is not as critical, so you are not going to die. So give us some time to maybe clear these people and take care of you. Because I have been to the hospital several times. Recently, one of my staff on the farm was bitten by a snake, and we took it to the hospital. She went through triaging. We were asked to wait for some tests, for some things to be done. Whilst we waited, she was very worried because she felt a snake had bitten her and then it could be poisonous. But I assume that because they looked at the bite marks, they knew what to do. Maybe it wasn't a poisonous snake, right? But she was alarmed. So I think that maybe if we had people like these in the hospitals to engage patients on the regular, to explain things, then people will understand the situations and not maybe think that others are being favored.
Okay, you are right. I may not be able to speak for all the thousands of facilities in the country. However, what I know is that for most of the bigger hospitals, they have customer service point. If you go to Kolebu now, you see the customer service point, you see the officers there actually working, and on daily basis, the health professionals themselves, especially the public health nurses and the doctors, depending on what the demands are, even before the OPD starts, for example, they are there educating the patients on some of these things. So this is something that actually happens. However, what we may see as potential shortfalls may be the point at which where a doctor has come to assess or a nurse has come to assess, and then you've been attended to, so I mean, in a way that can be described as some partial attention has been given you, because they know that, as you said, things are safe as far as that patient is concerned. And sometimes the demands on these professionals, because in most of our facilities we are under-resourced, so they might not get the opportunity to explain to all the relatives, the patients, and all of it. And sometimes even the patients who have actually had the benefit of the doctors talking to them are not the ones who will create the problem. However, a relative who has just entered the facility, maybe an hour or 15 minutes or 10 minutes after the explanations were made to the patient, is the one who will come and create the problems. So it is a multifaceted thing that we all need to appreciate and continue to educate ourselves as a people so that things are done in a proper way. 2, there are also systemic challenges in the health sector. The health system that we run has its own inherent problems. And until we address same, we may continue to have some of these what one may describe as inadequacies. But the truth is that if I look at practice 10 years ago compared to 20 years ago and now, you can see that there's been a lot of improvement in what you may describe as the soft factors. Because these days, we take the pains to lecture, to teach, to do workshops for all the health professionals, both as part of their continuous professional training or education exercises, as well as even when they are in school where they are doing the full-term courses to come out as specialists or to come up as specialized, individuals who support the mainstream. So I agree with you that we need to do a lot more of these things. But I can also say on all authority that these things exist.
Right.
But we cannot say that it is 100% effective.
And Dr. Yankson, this is opening us up to a bigger conversation about the health sector and some of the defects in the system. There's even the bigger story about, medical negligence, which is costing us well over 10 million, we understand. But before we go there, I want us to close the chapter on this main incident at the Reach Hospital. You are calling for the prosecution of this individual involved, but at the same time, you're a lawyer as well. He's raising concerns about the accusation coming through from the nurses. How do we balance it with evidence, right? Because so far, the nurse involved and the group, the nursing group, the union, they're yet to provide actual evidence of this individual assaulting the nurse.
You see, if I get what had happened there, apart from the key individual whose name has been mentioned all over the place, there were other persons involved. So we may say the key person and some associates. Now, if they believe that nurse was not assaulted, they should go to court and prove same. The evidence, as we know now, is that the nurse has been assaulted. This led to the Minister of Health going to the facility. It was not a charade. 2, the minister yesterday had a press conference and spoke on some of these issues. The professional body, the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association, have gone to the facility. We've all seen the reports. Individual unions within the labor groups in Ghana, or let's say the healthcare fraternity, have also done their own checks. Some have issued statements and all of it. So clearly, there's a preponderance of evidence, including the patient's own account and the medical report, that shows that the woman has been assaulted. It is up to the investigative agencies and the prosecuting agencies, the police and the AD department, to go ahead and do the rightful or the needful. Then the accused, if they believe that they were not the ones who did that, they can actually go to court and defend themselves. And the court will be very fair. If they are not the ones and the prosecution was done properly, they will be let go. If they are also found guilty, the needed or the rightful punishment will be meted out to them.
And
so, as far as I'm concerned, it is not about what they say.
I see.
But it is about what is on the ground.
Are you sort of disappointed or otherwise in the Minister for Health because he's not spoken about prosecution so far?
Well, I have heard him say that he set in place some investigations. So maybe he is also waiting for the outcomes of those investigations. However, for some of us, the call is that the prosecuting agencies, the police, the AGs, the investigative agencies, the CID, all of them should be able to also do their professional jobs and do the needful with or without the minister's intervention.
You know, this whole issue has also brought to the fore the issue of medical negligence. Yesterday, the minister spoke about it, and if you scan social media, there seems to be a lot of attention and pressure on healthcare professionals now, because some people believe that negligence is largely your fault, and we are losing a lot of lives due to this. What do you say to this as well?
Well, I think that we need to have this discussion within a certain context. Negligence, generally, as a word that we use on everyday basis, is not the same as medical malpractice or medical negligence as far as the laws of the land are concerned. You know, I can just say that, what you did was negligent.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. So anybody can go on social media, radio, or any platform and talk about somebody being negligent. However, when it comes to medical negligence, the courts have actually explained what it means. In fact, in Ghana, the authority for this is in the case of Alasan Kotokoli and Moro Hausa. The judge who actually sat on that case is known as Justice Eduse Accidental. He says that medical negligence, in a straight legal analysis, negligence means more than heedless or careless conduct, whether in omission or commission. So here you can see that the mere usage of negligence because you think somebody has done something careless or heedless is not the all in all. Now he goes on to say that in this straight legal analysis, medical negligence properly connotes the complex concept of duty, breach, and damage thereby suffered by the person to whom the duty was owing. Negligence as a thought is not coterminous with careless or heedless conduct. What this means is that in the proper legal analysis, we have to take three things into consideration. The duty of care, which the law courts have settled that all health professionals owe patients a duty of care. A breach of that duty and the damage that occurred. Now the breach and the damage, there is even a connection. The damage has to be proximate to the breach. So when you are actually talking about negligence in the spirit of what we do, it is the preserve of the court to decide that this amounts to medical negligence or otherwise by going through the three, i.e. the duty of care owed the patient, which is a matter of law, the breach of this duty, which implies a violation of some applicable or reasonable standard, or a deviation of a certain accepted standard, or conduct that one may describe as falling below what has been legally established, or what the profession itself deems as the right to protect others against, let's say, unforeseen harm. And of course, the courts also have to determine that the resultant injury or the damage was proximate to this breach. So you realize that in a straight legal analysis, the mere mention of the word negligence does not necessarily mean that medical negligence has been proven. And this will involve taking evidence and all of it. But what I can also say for sure, that it is so clear that reports that may be actual in terms of the overall analysis or may be perceived are actually on the high. One thing we also need to know is that medical errors are not the same as malpractice or negligence. So sometimes people talk about negligence, but technically it's about medical errors.
Thank you
now,
so much.
Medical errors, depending on what it is, may end up being some form of negligence or otherwise, because the errors may result in what we call near misses, no harm or harm. But when it gets to the harm, then potentially we may be in the realm of medical negligence as the legal position is.
I like the way you've broken everything down: negligence, medical errors, duty of care, and everything. What is clear right now, according to the Minister of Health, is that the state is burdened, and it's cost us over 10 million Ghana cedis to solve some of these cases. And as we speak, there are a lot of cases that the AG's office is working with his office to resolve. So we have these cases happening in the country. I hope you've heard the minister speaking to this.
Well, let me say this, Akoto. Even before the minister spoke, my person, I am privy to a lot of these cases. Let me also make this clear. Medical negligence or medical errors are part of medical practice.
Acceptable,
every country you visit in this world.
Acceptable part of medical practice?
Hold on. What I'm saying is that it is not an acceptable thing. However, because it borders on patient safety. However, it is something that you cannot do away with. If you go to all the jurisdictions on earth, medical errors, medical negligence, one way or the other happen. If you go to the United States, where they have the best medical services, that is where you also find the highest numbers of cases that border on medical negligence. If you visit the US today, some television stations, YouTube, what have you, you find people advertising, lawyers advertising, no win, no claim, that borders on medical negligence and what have you. So the fact that we have medical negligence in Ghana is not unique to this country. It exists everywhere. That is not to say we should not do our best to make sure we minimize sin. Minimization of sin sometimes comes at a cost, but we have to do it. If you go to the US, there is something we call defensive medicine. It arose as a result of medical suits that were very rampant. And defensive practice or defensive medicine basically means that no professional or health professional is ready to entertain any little errors or any little gaps in whatever they do. So you visit a hospital and you do a barrage of investigations that sometimes might be seen as not necessary, but they don't want to leave room. So because of that, it has also become a burden for them as far as their medical care system is concerned. And I remember in 2003, the then President George Bush, in the American Medical Association's annual conference where he delivered a speech, he made a statement that there are too many frivolous lawsuits against good doctors and the patients are paying the price. What it means is that at the least, people are ready to sue because they believe that there's been some negligence or whatever. So these good doctors, good medical practice, these frivolous lawsuits will go towards them. But the patients are now paying the price in the nature of the cost associated with defensive medicine. However, we should also be quick to add that the fact that some of these negligent problems that we have in our system, the cases that are piling up, some are also based on the defects inherent in our medical system. The outdated equipment, the lack of equipment, the lack of facilities, the lack of sometimes basic things like running water that actually increase the risk of, hospital-acquired infections because doctors, nurses cannot even get basic things like water to wash their hands and keep the basic hygiene that is needed. So it's a bigger problem than we think. On regular basis, I get colleague lawyers call me that, oh look, doc, you understand the law, you understand medicine. We even have a case, but even what is written, we don't understand. What it means is that the cases are going up, and there are reasons for it. People have become more enlightened. People have actually traveled elsewhere. They've seen some other standards. People are now becoming knowledgeable and knowing a lot more because of Dr. Google or the World Wide Web. So people are also empowered, and they will also read some of these things before they even come to the hospital. But I need to state emphatically that issues relating to medical negligence has been with us for over 50 years. If you go into the the legal record, the report, cases like Asante Kremo as far back as 1975 and others, some in the 60s, they all exist. There wasn't enough publicity on them, and probably as a people, we also believed in Facha Nyame and all these things. But now, there's a lot more that people are doing to unearth some of these things. I have actually seen billboards in town talking about, if you think you haven't been treated properly in the hospital, please come to us. We'll help you get redress. People also know that they can make money out of these things. So the cases, truthfully, are going up. And I'm privy to them. And it didn't start from, let's say, this year or the year before. It's something that has been moving in an upward trend all this while.
Let's hear what the minister said, and we'll take your final comment on this. And so the minister spoke this week about medical negligence. I just want you to hear what he said, exactly what he said, and I'll take your comment on this.
Medical negligence. Anytime I hear that, I clinch. We spend not less than, even in some cases, one facility, not less than 10 million Ghana cedis on medical negligence. Maybe you don't know. As a country, we don't have the money to buy the equipment, but we are spending so much. As I speak to you now, the cases on my table within this week are 3 that Attorney General has written to me to provide responses. Medical negligence. So it's a major issue that we are dealing with. And at the appropriate time, we may address you on medical negligence. It's a monster rearing its head that we must deal with appropriately.
So the minister says one facility as much as 10 million Ghana cedis in costs related to medical negligence. And you mentioned equipment, which you mentioned earlier. With your over 20 years of experience, how do you think we can really strategically as a country solve this capacity issue with equipment, with human resources, with the right facilities and the right consumables? How should the approach be?
Well, I think that we should go back to the drawing board and accept the fact that healthcare is expensive. 2, we should accept the fact that we need to prioritize healthcare as a people. If you look at all the indicators, we are nowhere near the percentages of our GDP that we ought to allocate towards healthcare provision, whether at the ECOWAS or West African level, the global level, and what have you. So we need to double up our efforts and make sure we do the right things. There are also gaps that exist beyond the funding issues, be it at the professional level, be it at the institutional level. The systems ought to be improved, and it takes deliberate action. 3, the costs that may inure or come to the way of the potential patient if we don't address these problems properly will be what I talked about earlier, i.e. the defensive medicine and the associated costs. Beyond that, we also need to understand that malpractice itself, as I stated, is something that is woven into the practice. If you go to the developed jurisdictions where they have all the facilities, malpractice issues exist and we report on daily basis.
Right, Doc,
right.
the way you are
If you
saying
go
this
through the
calmly,
book-
the
No,
way you are
just a
saying
quick
this
one, let
calmly,
me-
it feels as though they exist, and so it's okay, it's normal.
No, I'm not saying it's okay.
You are
What
not
I'm
saying that, but
we
that's how it's
should
coming
no. You
across
see,
to me.
I got to hold on. We need to understand reality. Let's say if you are a footballer or in the sport of football, injuries will happen. Okay, that is what I'm saying. That if you look at medical care or the healthcare systems the world over, issues of medical malpractice will one way or the other come to the fore at some point. But that does not mean that we cannot address the underlying issues that contribute to higher numbers.
Doc, and Doc, for the sake of time, obviously this is an interesting conversation. I would love to go on and on and on. But there's just a need for us to have closure on this. But for those of you who are joining us now, it's 9:04. Dr. Justice Yankson is a lawyer, former vice president, Ghana Medical Association, speaking about a raft of issues after the fallouts from the Reach incident where a nurse was assaulted. Doc, before we go, this clash between the political class and you, the professionals in the healthcare delivery sector, is coming up again simply because of the concerns of the minister that you in the unions appear to attack him at the slightest issue that comes up. It's bringing to the fore questions as to how the political class can liaise with you for a better and effective healthcare delivery. There are some who say, well, let's only have the health professionals manning the health ministries. Some are of the opinion that, well, it's a matter of policy. Let's diversify. Where do you stand on this, and how do you feel that we can have that synergy between you, the professionals in the healthcare delivery sector, and also the political class, those making the policies?
Well, you see, what we need to understand is this: health policy should be driven by experts in health policy. It should be driven by professionals. Yes, you could have an administrative minister, but the professionals within the system should be the ones to drive the policy. The bigger overarching policy may be announced by a government, but in terms of the nuances, the implementation of the policy, it is the preserve of the professional. Not only doctors, not only nurses, they are all cadres of health experts. Some who are specialized in just policy. So you go to the ministries, for example, you always will have a policy department or unit within any ministry. So these things can easily be resolved. Two, I don't think that the healthcare professionals or the professional groupings are quick to attack ministers, so to speak. I don't believe so. I have been part of the system, and we are almost always ready to collaborate with the political appointees, the professionals within the ministry, to address all kinds of issues. What I think may be a problem now is that with the advent of social media and a section, maybe reportage that keeps moving around, such that issues that maybe ought to have been discussed in camera are now brought to the open, such that everybody has his or her own way of interpreting what they saw or what they heard. And some of these things I think we should guard against him. Two, I also believe that when professionals bodies, for instance, in what has happened, issue statements, that should not mean or be interpreted as an attack on any political appointee, because the unions also have a mandate to protect the welfare and the interests of their members. So when issues happen and we all believe that it's in bad taste and we issue statements, I think the authorities that be should accept the situation, eat humble pie, and have discussions with these professionals, close door discussions, and come up with amicable positions or strategies that can help prevent and address the issues. I don't believe that any healthcare professional group is up in arms with a particular minister because he is not a non-medic. I don't believe so at all.
Dr.
To
Justice,
encourage the dialogue and make sure that things work properly. But to just state one little thing on this medical negligence. You see, when Akoto spoke, 10 million, the figures are alarming. And that is why we also need to take seriously what has been described as professional indemnity. The facilities, especially the public sector facilities owned by government, should start doing these things so that burden, as and when it arises, will not be on the books or the balance sheet of government. The laws of the land require that professionals in this country take professional indemnity. And it is up to the employer to ensure that the right things are being done. It is not only for health professionals, for lawyers, accountants, every group of professionals. So if now we are beginning to see the impact of the cost of medical negligence on our healthcare system, then I think the needful should also be done in that respect.
Thank you very much, Dr. Justice Yankson, for your thoughts this morning. Thank you so much. Dr. Justice Yankson is the former vice president of the Ghana Medical Association, and he's also a lawyer. So today he had to speak as a doctor and a lawyer, and at a point as both.